We're talking today with Doug Kirkpatrick, author of Beyond Empowerment, The Age of the Self-Managed Organization. Doug is principal of the Redshift 3 consulting group. He's also been with the Morningstar Company for a number of years, and was instrumental in the founding of the Self-Management Institute. He's a longtime colleague of mine and one of my very dear friends, and I'm excited to talk with him about the book today. Doug, tell us about, what is the book about?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's basically primarily a business novel. It's a short story about an entrepreneur that founds a company, finds some things that he thinks could be better in the course of operating his company, and comes to some underlying principles that guide a profound jugular shift in the organization of the company itself. And in addition to that, there are some vignettes in the back of the book about real companies that have undergone similar transitions or that have started out as self-managed organizations.
So the main character, you said, arrives at some principles. Tell us about one, maybe the key principle. I mean, what is it?
Sure. Well, a very foundational principle of self-management has to do with people keeping commitments to each other. To the degree that people honor their commitments, whether those are formally written down or whether they're verbally exchanged or ad hoc commitments, to the degree people honor those and uphold those, that permeates integrity throughout the organization, and it provides for a much more powerful, unified effort as a team toward the common mission.
Okay, so people do what they say they're going to do. It's a better world. I get that. How does that manifest itself for the main character in the story into some sort of action he can take as a leader of a company to change his company, revolutionize his company?
Well, he starts out with a very traditional hierarchical company.
Right.
He's the founder, he's the owner.
So this is the story of your everyday business leader then?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. And he finds that as the boss, people delegate virtually every jugular issue upward to him, and he ends up spending enormous amounts of time and effort trying to resolve issues that people could easily resolve for themselves.
A pain point that I'm sure many business leaders feel all the time, every day.
Absolutely.
Okay.
After struggling with that pain for a period of time, he comes to some conclusions. And one of those is that I want to have a principle-centered organization where people, A, keep commitments to each other, and B, do not use coercion or force against each other, the other foundational principle, and finds that to the degree people honor those principles and respect them, then he has less to do, and he can spend his time being much more productive and strategic.
Okay, I got it. So the story, does it come to a conclusion, or does it change his world?
Well, it definitely comes to a conclusion.
We don't want you to give away the ending, but
it has a good conclusion, a happy conclusion, I think, that supports the idea of self-management in organizations, which has a lot to do with freedom in organizations and the elimination of hierarchy.
So the audience here, the book, I've read the book, it's a great book. The audience here, your target audience, is it going to be that leader who is struggling to figure out how to structure his business a little differently so that he doesn't feel this pain? Or is it more intended to be educational for anybody? I guess maybe the question is this for somebody who's feeling pain, or can it be enlightening for anybody that's in business leadership?
That's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think business leaders at any level of an organization can relate to the foundational principles and understand why they're important and how they can be useful. However, someone who may be on the bottom rung of an organization may take a learning from this as well, and may motivate them to try and perhaps change or better their organization from within.
Sure.
Or even to seek a different organization that's more compatible with these principles.
Sure. I think that's one of the key things that I found with the book. I mean, there's a lot of books out there that you can go pick up, and it's like 3 points in a poem, right? it's do these little things in your company and it's going to revolutionize your world. But I think we've all become a little disenchanted by that. But this really digs deep into fundamental principles of how human organizations ought to work. And it gets down to almost the deepest level to really understand how people should work together and interact together. I mean, what pulled you to that principle level as opposed to the standard kind of pop business book formula?
Yeah, well, I guess what pulled me to it is just my experience in business.
Sure.
I started out with the Morning Star Company in 1990, and the founder was a very principle-centered business leader, and he started that company based on these two foundational principles. So when you grow up in a company that is as flat as the table that we're talking in front of right now, and the absence of force and coercion is foundational, as well as keeping commitments, which, by the way, those two principles are the foundation pretty much of all law. Civil law is based on contracts, keeping commitments, and force is the absence of force underlies criminal law. So they're as foundational as you can possibly get to human interaction. And they've proven to be, I think, pretty successful in the case of the Morning Star Company. And so I wanted to bring those principles to life and tell a little story and sort of expound on them in the context of a fictional company that didn't start out as a self-managed organization, but found its way there through the application of these foundational principles.
Final couple of questions. The subtitle is The Age of the Self-Managed Organization. Do you think that we're entering a new age in organizations? Are we moving into kind of a new period of time where things are fundamentally changing?
I do.
And is this the precursor of that?
Well, the book itself isn't a precursor, but the book, I think, tries to evidence the fact that I do think we're entering a new age of organizational life. Because when you look at successful companies like the Morning Star Company, which is in some ways radical in terms of how it views these principles and freedom in organizations, and the idea of self-management, and the idea of individuals undertaking all the aspects of traditional hierarchical management. And you look at other organizations, you look at the W.L. Gore and Associates, where everyone is considered an associate, and they have no deep layers of management whatsoever, and lots of freedom. You look at companies like Nucor Steel, where they are effectively managed by a huge intangible, unofficial justice system enforced by peers. And you look at the kinds of things that are happening in other organizations, driving freedom and empowerment programs over the last 10 years. I do think we're entering a new age, and I think that these examples are going to become prominent in people's minds as they decide how to organize their businesses in the coming years.
Final question. You talked about the driving force behind the main character in your book really seeking out these fundamental principles. The average business leader, can they take what you've put in place, or what you've talked about here, put it in place their organization? Are they going to see some financial benefits?
I think they will. Traditional management, hierarchy, bureaucracy has a real cost, and a very serious cost to the bottom line. And it's not just in the salaries of managers who are paid to supervise other human beings. It's also in the inefficiency that's created by having decisions routed through predefined routes that end up circumventing individuals who may have information that can bear on a particular issue or problem. So I think traditional management is very costly. Those costs are becoming self-evident, I think. Organizations that are bound up in those old structures, command and control structures, the industrial age kind of management theories, are just becoming less competitive as a result of those bureaucracies. And so I do think that this new paradigm is going to help shape the coming century of management.
Well, thank you very much, Doug.
Thanks, Paul.